In Legends continuity, Luke Skywalker is known as the Jedi that finally got things right and nearly perfect among the Order. The way he taught his Jedi was unlike anything we had seen in history up until that point. Luke allowed them to marry and encouraged them to have children. He allowed them to have lives of their own, and even allowed supervised studies of the dark side of the Force, wanting his Jedi to understand their long-standing enemies. Luke was truly setting a different standard for what it meant to be a Jedi, and it was because of this that he would receive a compliment from one of the most unlikely sources. That source is Carvaster, the brother of Mace Windu. For those of you who need a refresher, Carvaster was one of the last members of Tribe Windu, making him effectively the only brother of Mace. Due to having his entire family killed by poachers, he grew up in the dark jungles of the world of Huron Cal, trading in his sanity and humanity for the power of survival. Because of this, his already great potential in the Force translated into monstrous power, but he lost the ability to speak, only being able to grunt and growl while conveying his meaning to those around him through the Force. However, he was one of the most aggressive wielders of the dark side that the galaxy had seen up until that point, and he was certainly no friend of the Jedi, especially after Mace Windu ended his plans and threw him into a Republic prison on Coruscant. But a couple of decades later, his life would be saved, and he would announce Luke Skywalker as a Jedi like no other, a Jedi who did not fear the dark side whatsoever, making him extremely dangerous and extremely powerful. So today, join us as we discuss how a prolific user of the dark side of the Force said that Luke had no fear for it whatsoever, and why this made him exceptionally gifted. His mindset being a part of why Luke grew to be so powerful, not just his bloodline. To explore why Carvaster said this, someone who is naturally attuned to the dark side, we have to explore what was occurring. Our source today comes from the Legends novel Luke Skywalker and the Shadows of Mindor. In the novel, a former prophet of the dark side by the name of Lord Cronal returned to the galaxy as a warlock. Lord Cronal was once a servant of Darth Sidious who vanished into the unknown regions and trained with the sorcerers of Rand, a mysterious cult that didn't believe in the Force, but championed a more nihilistic entity simply called the Dark. It was allegedly the embodiment of death, destruction, and the end of all life. Lord Cronal had many names, such as the Shadow Spawn and the Black Hole, but they all served the same purpose. Lord Cronal had developed a technique using a type of metal known as the Melt Massive, which allowed him to take over the minds of just about anyone he wanted to. He used this technique to take over the mind of Carvaster, and used his body to attempt to kill Luke and Leia. After a very tough engagement though, Luke defeated the brother of Windu, enabling him to free his mind from the control of the Dark Sorcerer. However, the problem remained that the metal was still within his body, which connected him to Cronal's mind and his will. Because of this, Luke would manage to slowly convince Carvaster to trust him by speaking kindly to him and promising him that he would help him as a true Jedi. By conjoining hands with Carvaster, Luke was able to meld his mind into a network of metal connecting him to everyone and every individual that was afflicted by it. This even included the Sith-spawned Dark Troopers that Luke had been fighting, and eventually he would find his way back to Lord Cronal in his mind, where Luke would sense that he was deep in hyperspace. Lord Cronal at first was terrified when he felt the presence of Luke Skywalker entering the mindscape. The network of the dark was bending around a source of light, and he saw Luke as a shining beacon entering into the dark. Cronal began declaring how weak the Force was, and he attempted to consume the light, trying to break the connection and destroy this light side figure. As a wielder of the dark side, you can only imagine what a figure of pure light appearing would do to the mind of someone. But as Lord Cronal attempted to cast him out, Luke Skywalker only went deeper into his mind and the web of lies. Luke used this to literally shine the light of the Force into Lord Cronal, and Cronal began to feel warm, a very foreign feeling to him. He did everything he could to resist the light side, but soon it overwhelmed him as Luke began to purge the metal from both Carvaster as well as Lord Cronal. It was said that the metal left Cronal's body through his very pores, nose, eyes, and mouth in an oily black liquid. It surrounded him and encased him in a stone-like coffin of metal before he was lost to hyperspace completely. Once Lord Cronal was dealt with, Luke used the remaining connection to find every person who was connected via this metal, and he began to purge them of the black darkness that lay within, shining the light upon all of them. Unfortunately, this would end up killing most of them because of the properties of the vile crystal substance. The metal leaving their bodies was undoubtedly and unfortunately the cost of their lives, and only Carvaster alone managed to survive this process. But during it all, Luke decided not to look away from death, but to face it head on. Even though it pained him, Luke made himself look and feel each and every one of those afflicted with this vile virus, sensing all of them die without pulling away. And this is what the novel says. He did not look away. He did not withdraw his perception. He owed these men that much. Enemies they might be, but still they were men. None of them had wanted this. None had volunteered for this. None had even cooperated. This had been done to them as a casual disregard for their humanity. Luke could not allow its undoing to be the same. Finally, once it was all over, Carvaster was looking at Luke in disbelief, and they had a small conversation that went like this. Carvaster says through the Force, "I have known many Jedi, many years ago. That knowing was not a gladness of mine. I believed I would never know another, and I rejoiced in that belief. But it is a gladness for me to have been proven wrong. I am happy to have met you, Luke Skywalker, Jedi. You are more than they were." Luke shook his head blankly, blinking against the darkness. "Thanks, but I barely know anything." But then Carvaster says this, "So you believe, but I say to you, you are greater than the Jedi of the former days." Luke could only frown and shake his head yet again. "What makes you say that?" "Because unlike the Jedi Knights of old, Luke Skywalker, you are not afraid of the dark." Carvaster watched through the Force as Luke stayed, made himself look at all of the death that was caused by purging those that were his enemies, those that he should have hated, those that served and wielded the dark side unapologetically. But Luke did not see them as enemies. He saw them as humans, living beings in the Force. Luke entered the mindscape that connected all of them to the man who called himself the black hole at the epicenter of all of this darkness. He did so while championing the light, unafraid and full of courage. This had impressed Carvaster beyond reason, because so many Jedi that he had met before, such as his own brother in Windu, denied the darkness and sometimes refused that it ever existed within themselves. They despised it out of fear and would not go anywhere near it. They would only go to destroy those who wielded it without a second thought of their humanity. Luke was different. He had pity for those that fell to the dark side, and with his compassion, he would fight against them by getting as close to them as he possibly could. This is the lesson that Anakin Skywalker taught him. Luke is not afraid of the dark side. He knows that users of it do so out of fear, anguish, and unfortunately, a lust for power. Luke once said that to give into the way of the Sith was the abandonment of all hope, which was something to be pitied. Luke doesn't hate those in the darkness. He feels sorry for them, and because of that, his compassion and will to free them by any means necessary will completely override any fear that would arrive in the Jedi Grand Master. Luke saw how his own love and compassion healed his father, brought him from the depths of the dark side. He knows that these emotions of the light are very powerful and are the very weakness to the dark side itself. Luke has essentially perfected the use of reverse Dunmak. Originally, this was used as a dark side weapon to weaken and provoke enemies into making mistakes, belittling them, casting doubt upon their skill, where they were in the Force. But Luke admits that he used a Jedi version of this, stoking the conflict with his father using hope, encouragement, and above all, compassion. The old Jedi denied the dark side entirely, going as far as to deny any and all feelings that could lead them towards it. They closed themselves off to emotions like love, compassion, and joy, and this made them vulnerable and very much weaker. The Jedi were not utilizing the most powerful aspects of the light side of the Force. What's fascinating though, is even though Luke Skywalker was the one that put this into action, he was not the first Jedi to realize this, and to realize just how powerful a Jedi could become. This was something that Revan discovered, especially after being a Sith Lord. He wanted to introduce these ideas to the Jedi Council, but but he knew that they would be ignored at best and treated as heresy at worst. Luke unknowingly took on Revan's beliefs, deciding to use love and attachment as a means to empower himself. This outshined all the fear of the dark side and allowed him to fight boldly against it. Lord Cronal was terrified when he saw Luke in the Force, and he was absolutely powerless to stop him, purging the dark side out of both him and all of his followers. Luke Skywalker was truly the best iteration of what a Jedi was meant to be. Luke doesn't in any way condone using the dark side. In Luke's mind, and from his own experience, if the dark has a power which is useful, then that means that there is certainly a light variant of it that could be even stronger. Luke discovers that with both Dune Mach, Force Lightning, and even Force Fury, they can all be used in a Jedi fashion, crafted using the light side, not implementing the dark side whatsoever. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on this passage? And do you agree with us saying that Luke found the proper meaning of what it meant to be a pure and a nearly perfect Jedi? Did Luke Skywalker truly achieve what no other Jedi had before him? And is this part of what makes Luke so powerful? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below, as we love Luke and would love to continue to talk about him. As always, my friends, thank you so much for visiting the archives today, and may the Force be with you.